I returned to my lakeside cabin after a month of hell, only to find my son, Aaron, and a stranger spreading property deeds across my dining table. Aaron told me that if I just signed, all our problems will disappear. I gripped the pen, not out of fear, but because it was finally time to spring the trap he had spent years building. He did not know that legally. This place no longer belonged to me. My name is Judith Jude Mallory, and at 58 years old, I had never felt closer to breaking point. I used to run the floor at Evergreen Mercy Center as a head nurse, barking orders and saving lives. But the last 30 days had reduced me to a trembling statistic. I had spent a tough month in the city, undergoing invasive cardiac stress tests and watching my savings evaporate into copays and deductible limits. I steered my old Ford pickup truck up the gravel switchbacks of the Colorado foothills, my hands gripping the steering wheel tight enough to turn my knuckles white. All I wanted was silence. I needed the smell of pine needles and the stillness of the lake to remind me that I was still a person, not just a collection of failing organs and unpaid bills. This cabin was the only thing I had left that truly mattered. I turned the final bend onto the dirt driveway and slammed on the brakes. My sanctuary was already occupied. Aaron's black SUV, polished to a mirror shine that looked ridiculous against the dusty pines, was parked right in front of the porch. Beside it sat a nondescript beige sedan with a magnetic sign on the door that read, "Mobile Notary Service." I killed the engine. The silence I had craved was gone, replaced by the thudding of my own pulse in my ears. I walked up the steps and pushed open the front door. The air inside did not smell like home. The scent of old cedar and wood smoke had been overpowered by the cloying, sugary reek of Brianna's vanilla perfume and fresh coffee. My dining table, a heavy pine slab Hank had milled himself 20 years ago, had been cleared of my placemats and centerpiece. In their place sat a mobile printer, a sleek tablet, and a stack of documents thick enough to serve as a doorstop. Aaron stood by the fireplace. He looked pale, his designer shirt damp at the armpits. "Mum," he said, his voice rushing out too fast. "This is Rick, the mobile notary. We just need to sign a few small papers regarding the cabin. It is to handle the tax situation, Medicaid planning, and insurance liability. Just sit down." "Okay." Brianna was perched on my favorite armchair, her legs crossed at the knee. She cradled a cardboard latte cup and offered me a smile that showed teeth, but no warmth. "It is strictly routine." "Jude?" she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Everyone over 60 does this to protect their assets from the government. You do not want to be the only one left behind." "I am 58, I said, my voice sounding raspier than I intended. "Close enough," Brianna said, waving a manicured hand. "You do not want to look old-fashioned." The stranger, Rick, gestured to the chair opposite him. He had the tired look of a man who did this 10 times a day. He spread the papers out, pointing a pen at blocks of dense text. "These are standard instruments." "Ma'am," Rick said, "we have a quitclaim deed, an irrevocable transfer, and a retained life estate agreement. Basically, it just shifts the title to avoid state seizure if you get sick. You still get to live here until you die. It is just paperwork." I sat down and picked up the pen. The room felt incredibly small. I looked down at the documents. My eyes scanned the legal jargon, skipping over the whereases and hereinafters, until I found the section labelled Grantees. There were 2 names printed there in bold, black ink, Aaron Mallory and Brianna Frost. I did not sign. I checked the date. I checked the seal. Everything looked legally perfect. Aaron shifted his weight, moving to stand between me and the door. The mask of the concerned son slipped, revealing something sharper and uglier underneath. "Mom, listen to me," he said, and the desperation began to leak into his tone. "Your medical debt is climbing. The county or the state could seize this cabin any day now. And let's be honest, you aren't as sharp as you used to be. We are doing this to save you from yourself." The insult landed hard, but I did not flinch. I looked from the paper to my son, then to his wife, and finally to the notary who was checking his watch. "If I don't sign," I asked, keeping my voice level, "what happens to the cabin?" I looked past Aaron and saw the ghost of the man who built this place. Decades ago. I was just a young nurse at Evergreen Mercy Center, tired and lonely, until I met Hank. He was a carpenter with rough hands and a gentle laugh, who smelled like sawdust and rain. We did not have much money in those early days, but we had a dream. We spent 5 years building this cabin on weekends, driving up here with a cooler of sandwiches and a truck bed full of lumber. It was our second child, born of sweat and patience. Then came Aaron. He was the center of our universe. I could still see him as a boy, running down the dock with a fishing pole that was too big for him, while Hank laughed and stoked the charcoal grill. I remembered the night Hank sat me down on this very porch, his face serious in the twilight. "Jude," he had said, holding my hand. "If anything ever happens to me, you keep this cabin like you keep my heart. Promise me." I promised. 2 years later. A beam collapsed at the mill, and Hank was gone. I was nearly 50, widowed and drowning in a grief so heavy I could barely breathe. For months, I just sat here, staring at the lake, touching the walls he had sanded. The cabin was not just real estate, it was the only piece of him left on this earth. I swore I would never sell it. Aaron did not understand that grief. He was a senior in college then, smart but allergic to hard work. He started talking about passive income and leverage. He mocked my nursing shifts. "Mom, you are so conservative," he used to say, rolling his eyes. "Why work yourself to death? We could mortgage the cabin. We could turn it into a rental machine. That is the shortcut to wealth." He graduated, but never held a job for more than 6 months. There was always a boss who did not appreciate his genius, or a startup that just needed a little seed capital. I wrote the checks. $5,000 here to pay off a credit card, $2,000 there for rent. I told myself it was what a mother did. I dipped into my retirement funds. I drained my savings. I thought I was helping him stand up, but I was just teaching him that I would always be his cushion. Then Brianna arrived. She was beautiful. Working in public relations for Silver Creek Spirits, she charmed me instantly, bringing flowers and complimenting my cooking. But even then, her eyes always drifted to the cabin's vaulted ceiling. "Jude, this place has tremendous potential. She would coo. It is a crime to let it sit empty. It could generate thousands a month." They moved into my small townhouse in the city, claiming they needed to save for a down payment on their own place. I agreed. It was a trap I walked into willingly, month after month. I paid the electric bill, the water bill, and the grocery tab. Meanwhile, they drove up in a brand new car and flaunted the latest smartphones. It is just so hard to get ahead on a salary these days. Aaron would complain while eating the roast I had paid for and cooked. I slowly transformed from their mother into their unpaid housekeeper. I did their laundry. I scrubbed their dishes. I picked up their slack. The cabin sat empty and gathering dust, because I was too busy picking up extra shifts at the hospital to cover Aaron's mistakes. To him, this place was just a dormant asset, a pile of money rotting in the woods. Staring at the legal papers on the table now, I heard Hank's voice from years ago, a warning I had chosen to ignore. You love that boy too much. Jude? He had told me once after I bailed Aaron out of trouble at school. You love him so much it makes you blind. The memory hit me like a physical blow. Hank was right. I had been blind for a decade. But as I looked at the pen in my hand, my vision was finally clearing. It began with a proposal that seemed harmless. Aaron and Brianna sat me down one evening and pitched their smart idea. They wanted to list the cabin on short-term rental sites. Mom, think about the extra income, Aaron had said, holding my hands. You remain the sole owner, obviously. We just manage the bookings and cleaning. We split the profit 50-50. I hesitated, but I trusted them. I wanted them to succeed. I said yes. That was the mistake that opened the floodgates. Brianna listed the cabin on every platform available, charging premium rates I only found out about later. She routed the payments directly to her personal account. At the end of the first month, she handed me a crumpled envelope containing $200. The market is slow right now. She lied, avoiding my eyes. Guests are cheap. This is the best we could do. The money was an insult, but the damage to the cabin was a knife to the heart. The guests treated my sanctuary like a frat house. I found deep scratches in the floorboards and a cigarette burn on the dining table Hank had built by hand. When I pointed it out, holding back tears. Brianna did not apologize. Jude. Seriously, she snapped. Do you want the cabin to generate profit, or do you want it to rot in the woods? A little wear and tear is the cost of doing business. Back at the townhouse, the suffocation continued. The utility bills skyrocketed. The electricity bill alone hit $300 a month, and the water usage tripled. I used my pension and took exhausting night shifts at the hospital to keep the lights on. Whenever I asked Aaron to contribute, he became defensive. I am reinvesting every cent into future projects for us. He would say, Stop nagging me about money. You are so short-sighted. He did not contribute a single dime to the household. One late night, I came downstairs for water and heard Brianna laughing on the phone in the living room. I froze in the hallway shadows. She is such a gullible old woman, Brianna was saying, her voice low and mocking. That cabin is a gold mine. We just need to wait. Sooner or later, we will be on the title. Aaron just needs to be firm with her. My blood ran cold. I retreated to my room, feeling sick. After that night, Aaron changed. He stopped hugging me. He stopped asking about my day. He became critical, constantly telling me that I did not understand the modern economy. You are holding us back. He told me one morning when I refused to sign a loan application, you are ruining the family's future because you are too stubborn to leverage your assets. I tried to ignore the cruelty. I told myself they were just stressed. I retreated further, cooking their meals and cleaning their messes like a silent ghost in my own home. The pressure to mortgage the cabin to fund Brianna's dream of a boutique bar became a daily assault. I refused every time. In their eyes, I transformed from a mother into an obstacle. The breaking point of my patience happened on a Tuesday. I went up to the cabin to clean between guests because Brianna claimed she was too busy. I found my personal belongings shoved into a box in the closet. My wedding photo with Hank was face down. On the mantelpiece, inside a hand-carved wooden cup that Hank had cherished, I found a stained wine cork and a smear of bright red lipstick. I felt like a stranger was erasing my life. When I returned to the townhouse, the tension finally snapped. I confronted them about the disrespect. Aaron slammed his hand on the kitchen counter, making me jump. "Stop acting like a victim," he shouted. His face twisted in a way I had never seen before. "We are trying to build something real here, and all you care about is—" Some stupid, sentimental junk. Brianna stood behind him, arms crossed, watching me with eyes as cold as a winter lake. She did not say a word. She just watched her husband scream at his mother. In that moment, looking at Aaron's rage and Brianna's indifference, I realized the little boy I raised was gone. He was looking at me, and he did not see his mother. He saw a target. The envelope was waiting for me on the kitchen counter when I stumbled in from a 12-hour night shift. It was thick, ominous, and stamped with the logo of a bank I had never done business with in my life. I tore it open, my tired eyes squinting at the bold numbers in the summary box. I gasped. The statement showed a credit card balance of $24,000. The cardholder's name was printed clearly: Judith A. Mallory. I drove straight to the bank branch the next morning, my uniform scrubs still smelling of hospital antiseptic. The personal banker, a young woman with sympathetic eyes, pulled up the records on her screen. "Mrs. Mallory. This account was opened online 6 months ago," she explained gently. "The applicant used your social security number and your date of birth. All verifications were passed." She printed out the transaction history. I scanned the list, and the blood drained from my face. There were charges for bottle service at high-end clubs in the city. There was a $3,000 charge at a luxury car showroom for aftermarket modifications. Then I saw it a $4,000 charge for a hotel and casino in Las Vegas. I remembered that weekend vividly. Aaron and Brianna had come home tanned and smiling, claiming Aaron's startup had sponsored a company retreat. It was all on the company dime. "Mom," Aaron had bragged. "Perks of the job." It was a lie. I had paid for their champagne. I had paid for their gambling chips. I drove home in a cold fury, but I did not scream. I did not confront them. Instead, I waited until they left for dinner, and then I went into the study. I pulled open the heavy drawer of the family filing cabinet, digging past the old tax returns and warranty manuals. At the very back, tucked inside a folder labeled "Miscellaneous," I found a document that made my knees weak. It was a draft contract for a mortgage on my cabin. It was unsigned, but the margins were filled with notes in Aaron's distinctive, jagged handwriting. Estimated equity release, $150,000. He had scrawled next to the valuation. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced my hands to be steady. I pulled out my phone. I took clear, high-resolution photos of the credit card statement. I took photos of the transaction list. I took photos of the mortgage draft and Aaron's handwriting. I created a new, password-protected folder on my phone and locked everything away. For the first time in my life, I was building a case against my own son. Later that night, I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water when I heard voices in the living room. I stopped in the shadows of the hallway, pressing my back against the wall. "I am telling you, Aaron, the rumors are real," Brianna was saying, her voice low and excited. "My contact at the county office said Frontier Minerals just found a massive lithium deposit right under that ridge. Land prices in that sector are going to triple in the next 6 months. If Mom refuses to sell, We are going to miss the window. Aaron replied. The frustration in his voice was thick. We need to get the title transferred before the news goes public. Well, she is stubborn, Brianna said. She is not just stubborn. She is getting old, Aaron said, and the coldness in his tone made me shiver. She is forgetting things. If we have to, we can push for legal guardianship. It is not that hard to prove diminished capacity. We just need a doctor to say she is not fit to manage her assets. I covered my mouth to stifle a gasp. They were not just spending my money. They were plotting to erase me as a person. Don't worry, babe. Brianna laughed, a sound that chilled me to the bone. I will talk to the company lawyer. We will figure out a way to get her signature. She just needs to sign on the wrong line once, and the place is ours. I retreated silently to my bedroom, my hands clenched into fists so tight my fingernails cut into my palms. The sadness was gone. The mother who made excuses was gone. I reached into my nightstand and pulled out an old, dusty address book. I flipped through the pages until I found the name I needed. Monica Reyes. We had gone to nursing school together before she switched paths to law. She was now a partner at the Blue Ridge Legal Collective. I stared at the number for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone. I was done being the victim. It was time to go to war. I met Monica at a small, quiet coffee shop downtown, far away from the prying eyes of my neighborhood. I laid it all out on the sticky table. I told her about the Airbnb scheme, the unauthorized credit cards, and the conversation I had overheard about Frontier Minerals. I told her about the word guardianship. Monica listened without sipping her black coffee, her expression shifting from professional curiosity to cold, hard fury. Jude. Listen to me carefully, Monica said, leaning in. This is not just bad behavior. This is financial abuse and identity theft. They are building a case to declare you incompetent so they can liquidate your life. She slid a legal pad toward me. We need to stop the bleeding immediately, she said. First, we cut off all access to your bank accounts. Second, you change every password you own. And third, we move the cabin. I hesitated. Move it where into a trust? Monica explained. We will call it the Mallory Conservation Trust. I will act as the temporary trustee. Legally, you will not own the cabin anymore. The trust will. If Aaron tries to force you to sign a deed, it will be worthless because you cannot give away what you do not have. But it is Hank's cabin, I whispered, my voice trembling. It is the only thing I have left of him. That is exactly why you have to do this, Monica said softly. You are not giving it away. You are putting it in a vault. The trust is just a shield to keep them from stealing it. We went to the county land office the next day. My hand shook as I signed the transfer documents. I watched the clerk stamp the paperwork. The deed to the lakeside property was now officially held by the Mallory Conservation Trust, with all correspondence directed to Monica's law firm. Nothing would be mailed to my townhouse. Then, the counter-offensive began. Monica helped me freeze the fraudulent credit cards and file formal dispute claims. We filed a preliminary report with Adult Protective Services, just to create a paper trail in case things turned violent. Now, Monica told me, you have to go home and act. You need to be exactly what they think you are. I went home and played the role of the century. I started shuffling when I walked. I purposely left the stove on for a few seconds too long when Brianna was in the kitchen. I asked Aaron the same question 3 times in 10 minutes. I saw them exchange glances behind my back, smug satisfaction in their eyes. They thought the dementia narrative was writing itself. They had no idea that every time I went into my room, I was logging their conversations into a spreadsheet. I installed a small, inconspicuous smart doorbell camera at the cabin the next time I went up to check the pipes. Monica had bought it, and the feed went directly to her cloud account, not mine. Within days, I was watching footage on my phone of Aaron bringing strangers to the property. And this is the view from the future master suite, I heard Aaron say through the tinny speaker of my phone as he gestured to the lake. We are looking to close the title transfer very soon. I felt a surge of nausea, but I forced myself to breathe. I continued my double life. I cooked their dinner and washed their clothes while silently tallying every dollar of debt they had saddled me with. I was not just a mother anymore. I was a forensic accountant in an apron. Monica called in a favor with an old friend, a deputy sheriff named Grace Nolan. She briefed Grace on the situation. If I call, Monica told me, Grace will be there in 10 minutes. We just need them to make the move. We need them to put the pen in your hand. That night, I sat in my bedroom and looked at the photocopy of the trust agreement. The house was quiet, but the air felt heavy with the impending betrayal. I touched the signature line where I had signed away my ownership to save my home. Hank. I whispered to the empty room, tears pricking my eyes. I am temporarily giving our home to a stranger, just to save it from our son. The stress finally manifested as a crushing weight on my chest. I had spent decades as a head nurse telling patients that stress was a silent killer. Yet I ignored the warnings until I found myself gasping for air in my own kitchen. I was admitted to Evergreen Mercy Center, the very hospital where I had spent my career, for a battery of cardiac tests. This was the beginning of the tough month. Aaron sat by my bedside on the second day. He held my hand, looking every bit the concerned son, but his other hand was busy typing on his phone. He thought I was asleep, sedated by the medication. Through half-open eyes, I watched his thumb tap furiously. I shifted slightly, groaning to maintain the charade, and glanced at the screen resting on the bedsheet. The text to Brianna was clear. This is the opportunity. Mum is weak. If the doctor writes a few lines about cognitive decline or confusion, we can file for guardianship sooner. My heart rate monitor spiked, beeping a frantic rhythm. Aaron looked up, startled, smoothing his expression into a mask of worry. Mom, are you okay? Do you need the nurse? Just a bad dream, I whispered, closing my eyes to hide the rage burning behind them. As soon as he left, I called Monica. She arrived within the hour, bypassing the front desk with her legal credentials. She spoke directly to my attending physician, a man I had known for 15 years. She explained the potential for abuse and the need for absolute clarity in my medical records. The doctor agreed. He documented extensively that while my heart was under strain, my mental faculties were 100% intact. I was kept in the city for 3 weeks for cardiac rehabilitation and monitoring. It was a prison sentence, but it kept me away from the townhouse, leaving Aaron and Brianna unsupervised. While I walked on treadmills and endured EKGs, I lived a double life through the screen of my phone. Every time my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the cabin, I retreated to the hospital bathroom to watch. I saw Aaron unlock the front door like he owned the place. I saw him walk a man in a hard hat around the property. I turned up the volume, pressing the phone to my ear to hear the conversation over the hospital's air conditioning. The lithium deposits in this ridge are substantial, the stranger said. unfolding a large topographic map on my porch railing. If you hold the title to the entire parcel, Frontier Minerals is prepared to pay 3 times the current market value. We will have the title, Aaron replied, his voice dripping with greed. My mother is retiring. We are handling the transition now, 3 times the market value. That was the price of his mother's dignity. A few days before my discharge, Aaron came to visit again. He seemed jittery. He left his phone on the tray table while he went to the cafeteria to get coffee. It buzzed. It was a voice message from Brianna. I glanced at the door, then tapped play. When she gets out, take her straight to the cabin. Brianna's voice hissed through the speaker. Do not let her go to the townhouse. I have booked the mobile notary. His name is Rick. We have to close this immediately. I put the phone back exactly where it was. When Aaron returned with a lukewarm coffee, I was staring at the ceiling, looking frail and lost. Aaron, I said, letting my voice tremble. I feel so confused lately. I just want to go to the lake. I want to rest. That is a great idea. Mum, he said, his eyes lighting up. The fresh air will be good for your head. During that month, Monica and I had been busy too. We finalized a new will. We executed a durable power of attorney that gave Monica full control over my medical and financial decisions if I became incapacitated, explicitly blocking Aaron from any guardianship role. I was building a fortress around myself, brick by legal brick. On the day of my discharge, the doctor played his part perfectly. He told Aaron that I needed absolute quiet and a stress-free environment for at least 30 days. Take her to the cabin, the doctor instructed. Let her relax. Aaron nodded, helping me into a wheelchair with a gentleness that made my skin crawl. He thought he was driving a senile old woman to her slaughter. He drove me up the winding mountain roads, talking about how he would take care of everything, how I didn't need to worry about bills or paperwork ever again. We will handle it all, Mum, he said, patting my knee. You just rest. I looked out the window at the passing pines, clutching my purse. Inside was the phone that held the recordings, the photos of the credit card statements, and the number for the sheriff. He was driving me to the cabin to trap me, but he did not know that the cage was already locked, and he was the one inside. Aaron ushered me into the main room, his hand guiding my elbow with a solicitude that felt more like a jailer's grip than a son's embrace. You need fresh air, Mum, Aaron said, his eyes darting to the expensive watch on his wrist for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Do not worry about the heating bill or the groceries. We have it all covered. You just need to breathe. He was pacing, his shoes clicking nervously on the hardwood floor. A few minutes later, the sound of a car door slamming shattered the peace of the woods. Brianna walked in, followed closely by the man I now knew was Rick. They were not carrying casseroles or welcome gifts. They were hauling a portable printer, a flatbed scanner, and a heavy briefcase. Within seconds, my cozy lakeside sanctuary was transformed into a cold, sterile transaction center. They sat me down in the corner by the window, in the worn leather armchair where Hank used to sit for hours, whittling driftwood. It felt like a desecration. Rick sat opposite me, spreading the paperwork across the small side table, while Brianna hovered, smelling of vanilla and ambition. Rick cleared his throat, launching into a rehearsed speech. So, Mrs. Mallory, we are executing a quitclaim deed alongside a retained life estate instrument. This effectively severs your fee simple interest, but maintains your possessory rights for the duration of your natural life. I blinked, feigning confusion. Brianna leaned in, speaking slowly and loudly, as if I were hard of hearing or simple-minded. Rick just means the house belongs to us on paper, but you still get to sleep here. Jude, she said, flashing a tight, patronizing smile. It is just legal stuff. You do not need to worry your head about the big words. It is for your own good. Aaron stepped closer, crouching down so his face was level with mine. He took my hand, his palms damp. Mum, we have news, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Brianna is pregnant. We are going to have a baby. I looked at Brianna's flat stomach. I did not know if it was true or just another calculated lever to pry the cabin from my hands, but the cruelty of using a potential grandchild as a bargaining chip made my stomach turn. We need stability. Mom, Aaron pressed, squeezing my hand too hard. We need assets. If you do not sign this, we might lose our chance to buy a real home for the baby. You do not want that. Do you? When I remained silent, staring at the dust motes dancing in the light, Brianna switched tactics instantly. The sweetness evaporated. Look, Jude, she said sharply, if you get sick again, Medicaid is going to come for this place. They will seize the cabin to pay your hospital bills because you look too asset-rich on paper. Do you want the government to take Hank's house? Or do you want it to stay in the family? I had never applied for Medicaid in my life. I had private insurance and a pension. It was a bald-faced lie designed to prey on the fears of the elderly. Rick nodded solemnly, tapping the paper. I see it happen all the time. Mom, the state takes everything. It is best to transfer the title to the children now. It is the only safe option. He flipped to the signature page, pointing to a bright neon sticker. Sign here, here, and here. I felt the air in the room grow heavy. Aaron stood up and moved casually to lean against the front door, crossing his arms. It was a subtle shift, but the message was clear. No one was leaving until this was done. Mom, just trust me, Aaron said, his voice hardening, losing the veneer of concern. You have messed up so many of my opportunities before. You were always too cautious. Do not ruin this for me, too. I reached into my pocket. Aaron flinched. But I just pulled out my phone. I just need to turn off the ringer. I mumbled, my fingers shaking not from fear, but from adrenaline. I unlocked the screen and opened the voice memo app. I hit the large red record button. I slid the phone into the pocket of my cardigan, which I had draped over the back of the chair, positioning the microphone toward the table. I picked up the pen, letting it hover over the paper. I looked at Rick, then at Brianna. I want to be sure I understand, I said, my voice quavering perfectly. So, if I sign this deed, the cabin is still mine, and if I do not sign, the government will definitely take it away. Brianna rolled her eyes, exasperated. Yes, Jude. For God's sake. How many times do we have to say it? You are signing to save the house. It is the only way. And you are sure, I asked, looking at Rick. 100%? Ma'am. Rick lied smoothly. It is a standard protective measure for your benefit. The confession was recorded. The trap was sprung. I hesitated 1 second longer. Aaron snapped. He slammed his open palm onto the wooden table, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the small room. Sign it, he shouted, his face twisting into a mask of ugly entitlement. Stop stalling and sign the damn paper. Mum. I lowered the pen until the tip touched the line. Then I stopped. I took a deep breath. Letting the tremor leave my hands, I sat up straighter, my spine stiffening against the leather of Hank's chair. I lifted my head and looked Aaron directly in the eyes. The confusion was gone from my face. The frailty had vanished. I stared at him with a gaze that was cold, clear, and absolutely terrifying. I placed the pen gently on the table and pushed the stack of papers away from me. The scratching sound of paper sliding against wood was the only noise in the room. I looked up, my face devoid of the confusion I had worn like a mask for weeks. "Are you sure that everything here is completely legal?" "Aaron," I asked, my voice steady and low. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Aaron blinked, his mouth slightly open, before he could answer. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen and turned the volume all the way up. "If you get sick again, Medicaid is going to come for this place. It is the only safe option." Brianna's recorded voice filled the cabin, shrill and clear. Then came Rick's voice, confirming the lie. 100%, ma'am. It is a standard protective measure." Brianna's face drained of color. Rick looked at the phone as if it were a bomb. "What is this?" Aaron whispered, backing away a step. I did not answer him. Instead, I reached into my large purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I tossed it onto the table on top of their fraudulent deeds. It landed with a heavy thud. "You want to talk about paperwork," I said. "Let's talk about this." I slid the top document toward Rick. It was a stamped, official deed transfer. "You are trying to notarize a transfer of property from Judith Mallory," I said, looking Rick dead in the eye. "But Judith Mallory does not own this cabin. As of 3 weeks ago, this property belongs to the Mallory Conservation Trust. The trustee is Monica Reyes." Aaron stared at the document, his eyes scanning the lines frantically. What he choked out. "What did you do?" "I protected myself," I said. "And inside that envelope, you will also find a copy of my new will, which disinherits you completely. You will also find a police report regarding the $24,000 of credit card debt you opened in my name." Rick stood up so fast his chair tipped over. He started gathering his things, his hands shaking. There must be a misunderstanding. I was told the title was clear. "You are attempting to notarize a deed for a property I do not own, based on recorded lies about government seizure," I said, cold as ice. "And every word of this conversation is being recorded." I tapped a specific icon on my phone screen. It was a panic button Monica had installed. It instantly sent my GPS location and the last 30 seconds of audio to 2 specific contacts. "I just sent this recording to the sheriff," I said. Aaron's face twisted into panic. He lunged across the table, his hand reaching for my phone. "Give me that," he screamed. I was ready. I stood up and backed quickly toward the window, putting the heavy armchair between us. "You just proved me right, Aaron," I said, my voice trembling with adrenaline but not fear. I wanted to believe I was wrong. I wanted to believe you were just lost. But you proved that everything I did this past month was necessary. Aaron started to come around the chair, his fists clenched, but he froze. Blue and red lights flashed against the cabin walls, illuminating the terror on his face. The wail of a siren cut through the mountain air, loud and close. A second later, tires crunched on the gravel driveway. The front door burst open. Deputy Grace Nolan stepped in, her hand resting on her belt. followed closely by Monica. Monica looked at the scene, the papers, the notary. My son cornered like a rat, and she did not look surprised. "Everyone step away from the table," Grace ordered. Aaron froze. Brianna slumped into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Rick stood with his back to the wall, holding his briefcase like a shield. Grace walked over to the table and glanced at the papers. She looked at Rick. "I am going to need to see your license and your logbook," Grace said. "Right now." I walked over to Monica. She put a hand on my shoulder, a silent anchor in the storm. I looked at my son, who was staring at the floor. Brianna looked up, forcing a stiff, unnatural smile at Grace. "Officer, this is just a family misunderstanding," she stammered. "We were just helping Jude with some estate planning. It is all very emotional." Monica stepped forward. She dropped a heavy file on the table next to my envelope. "I have reviewed the bank records, the unauthorized credit lines, and the footage from the camera we installed on the porch," Monica said, her voice cutting through Brianna's lies like a scalpel. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is a plan." Deputy Grace Nolan marched Rick to the far side of the room, separating him from the herd. I watched as the notary's composure crumbled under the weight of a badge. He was not a criminal mastermind. He was just a greedy man caught in a felony. I did not know she didn't own it," Rick stammered, his voice loud enough for us all to hear. "The wife, Brianna, she hired me. She told me to bring blank templates so we could adjust the terms on the fly. She paid me an extra $500 to skip the standard counseling protocols." Monica stepped forward and laid the rest of our cards on the table. She spread out the credit card statements that showed the unauthorized spending. She placed the printed screenshots of the text messages between Aaron and Brianna regarding Frontier Minerals. Finally, she played a video clip on her tablet from the hidden doorbell camera. It showed Aaron walking a surveyor around the property 2 weeks ago, pointing at the land like a king surveying his kingdom. "This is a conspiracy to commit fraud," Monica said, her voice devoid of emotion. "We have proof of identity theft, elder financial abuse, and attempted grand larceny." The room went silent. Then, Brianna turned on her husband. "It was all his idea," Brianna shouted, pointing a manicured finger at Aaron. "I just did what he told me to do. He said his mother was losing her mind. He said he had power of attorney." She looked at me, her eyes wide and desperate. "Jude, you know me. I would never do this. And the baby thing, Aaron made me say it. There is no baby. He just thought it would make you sign faster." The revelation hit me like a physical slap. There was no grandchild. It was just another lie. Another emotional weapon used to bludgeon me into submission. Aaron looked at his wife with horror. The alliance they had formed to rob me dissolved instantly under pressure. You liar," Aaron screamed, his face turning red. "You spent the money. You are the one who listed the place on Airbnb. You are the one who booked the trip to Vegas. Don't you dare pin this all on me." "Enough," Grace barked, stepping between them. She looked at me. "Mrs. Mallory, based on what I see here, the district attorney would have a field day. We are talking about multiple felonies. Mandatory prison time is on the table." Monica walked over to me and lowered her voice. "The decision is yours, Jude. We have enough to put them both away for 5 to 10 years. Do you want to push this all the way to trial? Or do you want to use this leverage to force a different outcome?" I looked at my son. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement had evaporated. Aaron fell to his knees on the hard floor. Tears streamed down his face, and for a second, he looked like the little boy who used to scrape his knees running on the dock. "Mom, please," he sobbed, reaching out to grab the hem of my pants. "Please do not let them arrest me. I am sorry. I was drowning in debt. I did not mean to hurt you. Please. Mom." I looked down at him. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to smooth his hair and tell him it would be okay. But then I remembered the way he had stood over me 5 minutes ago, blocking the door, shouting at me to sign. I remembered the text message where he called me weak. "There is one more thing," Monica said, interrupting his sobbing. "Jude, during my investigation into Aaron's finances, I found something else. He did not just target the cabin. He has a pending agreement with a hard money lender in the city. He listed your townhouse as collateral. He forged a promissory note. If we had not stopped this today, you would have lost your home in the city too." The air left my lungs. He was not just taking the extra. He was taking everything. He was willing to leave me homeless. Brianna saw the look on my face. She realized Aaron was sinking, and she decided to use him as a stepping stone to save herself. She stepped toward me, ignoring her husband weeping on the floor. "Jude, listen," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I have emails. I have the login for the bank account where he hid the Airbnb money. I can give you everything. I will testify against him. Just leave me out of the police report. Maybe we can work out a deal where I get a small percentage of the cabin's future sale. A finder's fee for helping you catch him." It was breathtaking. It was the most vile, desperate, and audacious thing I had ever heard. She was trying to sell out her husband to his mother for a paycheck. I looked at the three of them. The weeping son who would sell my roof to pay his debts. The daughter-in-law who would sell her soul for a cut of the profits. The notary who would break the law for $500. I held the power of a god in that room. I could snap my fingers and send my only child to prison. I could destroy his life forever. Or I could craft a punishment that would last longer than a prison sentence. I looked at Monica, then at Grace. The fire in the fireplace crackled, the only sound in a room thick with betrayal. I took a deep breath, and I made my choice. "Quiet," I said, my voice slicing through the chaos in the room. The single word silenced them all. Brianna's desperate pleas stopped. Aaron's sobbing ceased. Even Rick froze. I looked at each of them, feeling a strange, icy calm settle over me. "I admit my part in this," I said, looking at the table where the evidence lay spread out. "I let my blind love turn me into a bottomless wallet. I let you drain me dry because I thought that was what a mother did. But as of today, that story ends." I turned my gaze to Brianna first. She looked up at me, a flicker of hope in her eyes, thinking her offer to sell out my son had worked. "I have no obligation to protect you," I told her, my voice hard as granite. "You will face every legal charge that Monica and Grace see fit to file. There will be no side deals. You will not get a sliver of this cabin or a single penny from me." Brianna's face twisted into an ugly snarl. "I will ruin you," she shrieked. "I will put this all over the internet. I will tell everyone you are a senile old hag who go ahead." Monica interrupted calmly. "We have the bank logs, Brianna. We have the emails where you set up the accounts. If you make this public, you just add defamation and harassment to the pile. You will bury yourself deeper." I turned to Aaron. He was still on his knees, his expensive pants stained with dust from the floor. I did not scream. I did not cry. "You are my only son, Aaron," I said, speaking slowly so he would hear every syllable. "But sharing my blood does not give you the right to crush me just to get a mining contract." He flinched as if I had struck him. "Here is the offer," I said. Monica slid a document she had drafted earlier across the table toward him. "I will ask the district attorney to consider a plea deal for you. It might keep you out of prison for a long time. Unlike your wife." Aaron's head snapped up. "I will do anything." "Mum, you will sign this commitment," I said. "You will repay every single dollar you stole, with interest. You will be banned from this property and any asset I own forever. And you will agree to a 5-year restraining order. You do not come near me unless a lawyer is present." Aaron looked at the paper. He looked at Brianna, whom Grace was now hauling to her feet. He knew this was the only life raft in the ocean. "Okay," he whispered, his hands trembling violently. "Okay, I will sign." He scribbled his name on the line. Grace pulled a pair of handcuffs from her belt and snapped them onto Brianna's wrists. "You are making a mistake," Brianna screamed as Grace marched her toward the door. "He is the bad guy, not me." Rick gathered his briefcase, looking terrified, as Grace motioned for him to follow them to the cruiser for questioning. Aaron stood up slowly. He looked broken, a shell of the arrogant man who had walked in here an hour ago. He hesitated at the door, turning back to me. He raised his arms slightly, a reflex to hug his mother, but he stopped when he saw my face. "Go," I said. "From now on, we speak through the courts. If you ever actually change, maybe we will see if there is anything left to say. But not today." He dropped his arms, nodded once, and walked out into the cold mountain air. The cabin grew quiet. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the slam of the police cruiser door outside. I was alone with Monica. I picked up the stack of paperwork Aaron had tried to force me to sign. The quitclaim deed, the transfer, the lies. I walked to the wood stove and opened the iron door. I tossed the papers onto the dying embers. I watched the flames curl around the edges, turning the legal jargon and the false promises into grey ash. That evening, I sat on the porch steps, alone. The sun had set, and the lake was a sheet of black glass reflecting the moon. The wind whispered through the pine trees, carrying the scent of rain. I knew tomorrow would bring meetings with prosecutors and hours of forensic accounting. It would be a long, ugly road to reclaim my life. But for the first time in years, the crushing weight on my chest was gone. I was not afraid anymore. The knife was finally in my hand. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I hope it helps someone out there spot the signs before it's too late. Please let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what you would have done in my shoes. Don't forget to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help get this story out to more people. Stay safe, everyone.